Okay, so this is a walkthrough video on how to find and utilize secondary sources. You're getting started on a research project, and so you're going to be doing, this might sound intuitive, but a lot of research. Before we even start looking at the college website to show you how to go about finding sources from our library, what I want to show you and have you look at is a couple of sample sources. I've invented these. The reason I want to do this is because if you read the information on the annotated bibliography, you know that one of the important things is that you're using 3 books or ebooks and 3 articles of some sort. The thing that students screw up most frequently is they try to find articles and they end up finding websites. The other problem that students have is finding reliable, credible sources. So we've already talked a little bit about in the guidelines for the annotated bibliography what that means. But here's what I want to take a quick look at first. I've made up these 8 sources. And there's 2 questions that you want to answer about each of them. Does this seem like it would be a credible source based on what I said in the PowerPoint on annotated bibliographies? And is this something that I can count in my annotated bibliography? I actually have a second list that we'll do for those as well. So go ahead, what I want you to do now is pause the video, read about each of these 8 sources, and decide for yourself whether you think they're credible sources before I go through each one, and see how well your assessment aligns with mine. Okay, so hopefully you pause the video, and now we're going to go through each one of these. So the first item is, number 1, a blog written by a 19-year-old college student who goes by the name Party Foreverer, explaining why kids should be allowed to drink whenever they want. This would not be a super credible source because this is an incredibly biased observer, right? This is a college student, probably wants to be allowed to consume alcohol, and so he's got a very centered around himself or herself perspective. There's no sense of what the deleterious effects of alcohol are, probably acknowledged. It's all about, this is what my experience is. So you wouldn't really want that. Also, a blog is not a journal article, so this wouldn't work either. Then we've got a newspaper article from the Associated Press discussing the number of fatal car crashes involving teens and alcohol across European countries. Hopefully you thought that this was an acceptable source. The Associated Press is a non-biased source, and a newspaper article would be okay. As you're going to see when we do our search, sometimes newspaper articles are going to show up, so that one would pass the test. Next, we've got an article from Mothers Against Drunk Driving arguing that we should increase the drinking age to 24 because alcohol makes people make bad choices. At first, this may seem like a perfectly acceptable option. However, what you may not know about Mothers Against Drunk Driving is that organization has sort of transformed from being a group who is opposed to drunk driving, but they've really simply become an anti-alcohol use group. So they're not the most reliable source. They're going to be skewed. So that one I would be a little bit iffy on. Then you got a scholarly article from National Nutrition that discusses the bodily effects of drinking beer in different age groups. This one hopefully you said yes to. Not only is it a scholarly article, which means that it's print, but also discussion of the bodily effects that drinking beer has on different age groups. This would be good information for you to include. So hopefully you thought that would be a good source. Next, we've got a book on the history of alcohol, how it is made, how it has been used, and cultural relationships between people and alcohol, published by Harvard University Press. Again, hopefully you thought this was a good one. It's from a reliable press, and it's a book. So both of those things would be perfectly fine. So as you're doing your research, if you see Harvard University Press, that would be indicative. Remember, one of the things I said was a reliable or credible publisher. That would be a good sign. An interview with the CEO of Anheuser-Busch, who talks about why we should allow people who are under 21 to drink beer in the presence of their parents. So for the purposes of our bibliography, an interview is not a good source, right? It doesn't fall under, unless it's a written out interview, then it would be fine. But in terms of credibility, obviously the CEO of Anheuser-Busch has a particular bias here, so you would want to be careful about using that. Then we've got a YouTube video that claims 91% of kids who drink beer before they are 21 are arrested for DUIs before they're 30. So obviously a YouTube video is not a usable source for your bibliography. You're going to be able to use whatever kinds of sources you want, well, extra sources in your final paper, but here a YouTube video would not work. But then the other problem is anybody can make a YouTube video, and anybody can decide to claim anything they want about stats. So you've got to be really careful about that. So this would not be a particularly good source. Last but not least, an article from a magazine that examines the drinking habits of college-age students and the effects of alcohol use on brain function and bodily illness. The real question here would be, what is the magazine? Is it a magazine that's in print? If so, then it's perfectly fine. And also, the magazine that it's coming from would determine whether it's a credible source. You know, if it's Beer Drinkers Monthly, then you probably don't want it. If it's, you know, We Hate Alcohol Quarterly, also probably not something you want. But if it's something more unbiased, then that's fine. Okay, now I'm going to scroll down to these other sources. And thinking less about credibility, I want you to just think about the guidelines for the bibliography and which of these would be appropriate for that project. So again, I want you to pause the video, look at each of them, and decide yes or no. Okay, hopefully again you paused the video and aren't just waiting for me to tell you what to think. But let's take a look at what we've got here. A book titled Crash and Burn, Beer and Its History, which can be checked out of the SCC library. Hopefully you said yes, it's a book, it's from our library, that works fine. An article from CNN.com that reports upcoming legislation to change Missouri's legal drinking age. The idea might be good, but CNN.com is not a journal. That's a website. So even though CNN is largely reliable, for our purposes, it does not meet the requirements. An ebook titled Vino Vini Vici, The History of Wine, downloadable from my college website. Ebooks are fine, so this would be acceptable. www.whyweshouldbedrinking.com, again, websites not allowed, so don't do that. In favor of cheersing, Why We Should Lower the Drinking Age in the United States, an opinion editorial article appearing in National Geographic Volume 7, Issue 6, that would be okay, because National Geographic is a print journal, and that would be perfectly fine. Don't Drink, Don't Blink, a book you might find at the St. Charles County Library. This would actually be okay. I have no problem with you actually finding books elsewhere as long as they are actual books or ebooks. So this would be fine. Someone's in the Kitchen with Whiskey, a blog article you found on WordPress.com. Hopefully you said no, because again, even though it's calling itself an article in the description, it's on a blog. It's not from a magazine or a journal. It doesn't have page numbers, so that would not work. And last but not least, the Wikipedia page lists all the legal drinking ages in countries around the world. While that information might be useful, it is not where you want to get it from. Wikipedia is not a great source for that, because anyone can change Wikipedia. So if I decided to just mess with you and change the legal drinking age in Zimbabwe to 29, and you didn't already know the drinking age in Zimbabwe, how would you know that that was accurate? You wouldn't. That's the problem. Okay? So hopefully that gives you some further insight onto what is going to work for your projects. So now let's turn to how to go about finding sources. Okay, so I've opened up the St. Charles Community College website. And under the quick links, I'm going to want to go to library. I'm going to scroll down here a little bit. This is your primary search bar. So there's three different searches you can do. You can search for books and films, you can search for just articles, or you can search all. For the moment, I'm going to search all. Now, my sample topic that I've been using is the abortion debate, because that's on the no-no list, so none of you should be doing that project. So I'm just going to start by typing in abortion. And don't worry about that pop-up. Now I'm going to wait a minute while it finds all the sources that I'm going to find. It's probably going to be a good hearty number of them, if it ever decides to open. Okay, so now here's what I've got. As you'll see, me just searching for the term abortion gave me 368,000 plus articles and books. I probably want to pare that down. So what you're going to eventually want to do is, based on your subject, you're going to want to do some more thorough searches. So I might want to do something like abortion laws and search there. So I've refined it a little bit. So let's just use this. So you might need to do some playing around with what your search terminology is. Okay, so now, as you start looking for things, there's a couple different options you have here. So first of all, what I want to show you is that from here, you can pare this down by format. So say I need to find some books. If I click books, I end up with just only the 718 books that I'm looking for. This is going to be both your ebooks and your real, or quote unquote, real books. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look through here for some books. So let's see if there's something I find interesting here. How about this? Inches from birth. Let's just choose this one. I'm just choosing this randomly. Okay, so I'm going to click on this. Now this is what I'm going to get first. If you're working from school, it's going to send you directly to the book itself. However, if you're working at home or anywhere like that, you're going to have to put in some information. So I'm going to go ahead and put in my last name. Then I'm going to put in my ID number. This is the one that's on your school ID. And then you're going to add the letters SC. So then I'm going to click submit. You can save your password if you want. That way you only have to do it once when you log in. And then sometimes it's going to send you to the same page. So it's going to ask you to do the same thing again. So I'm just going to do it again. You got to remember that SC. Have it save another one. Once I've gone through that rigmarole, and I wait for a few minutes while it decides what it's doing, it should allow me to go into the page. One of these days. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so this takes me to this page. This is a chapter out of a larger book, Abortion by Mason Crest. So let me pull this over here. This is an ebook. The reason that I know this is because I've got this thing that says PDF full text. So if I want to look at this, this is how you use an ebook. So I might just click PDF full text, boop, and I'll end up with the actual PDF of the book. Now it has already sent me straight to the chapter I want. It's slowly loading it up, so I can read this. So this counts as one of your books. I'm not really going to worry about making sure that it. Here, I'm going to make this a little bigger for you guys. No, I'm not. So then I've actually got the pages of the book. So again, notice I have page numbers, so I know that it's something to print. I can go back to earlier chapters if I like. So this is where the table of contents is going to be. Okay, so using an ebook is very convenient because it doesn't require you to actually make a trip to the library. Okay, so I'm going to close out of here. We're going to go back to our list. And I'm actually going to widen my scope back to the abortion info list. And this is quite a cheery topic that we're using, but it'll certainly have choices. Okay, so I've searched abortion, and now I'm going to pare it down to my books. These are all books. Oops. I'm not sure what just happened there. That's weird. Here we go. Okay, sorry, I'm not sure what happened there. Once I get into books and film, I can even get whether it's ebook or regular book. Okay, so let's say, so one way that you can tell is there'll be a little icon here. So I know that these are books. This is an ebook. You shouldn't be afraid to use an actual book. So let's say I want this book. So I'm going to click here. It's probably going to make me go back through. I'm not sure if it's going to make me re-sign in or not. So it's not. Once I've signed in, I don't need to sign in anymore. Okay, so what I would do with this information is right here where it says available at call number. Put this number in on a piece of paper, write it down, put it in your cell phone, whatever you need to do, and also write down the title. And then you can go find it at the library. You can always go to the reference librarians at their desk inside the library, which is when you walk in, it's going to be, once you go through the little rotunda and you turn right into the library proper, it's the desk straight ahead of you. You can also ask at the circulation desk, and they can tell you where to find these things. They're there to help you with that, okay? All right. So that's how you can find books that you might want to use. So now let's get into the fun part, which is articles. Again, remember, your 3 sources for your project should come from things that you find on our school website. If you just Google abortion, so if I go over here and I just put abortion into my Google search, none of this stuff counts. So if I find this, abortion, just facts, this is not an acceptable source for my paper, for this part of the project at least, because it's a website. It's not an article. Okay, so here we have articles. The first thing you want to do when you're looking at articles is not actually look at the title. You want to look over here. You're most interested in items that have this PDF button because that means we have the actual PDF or we have the full text. If it says full text like this, that's also okay, because then you can find what you're looking for. Now, there's also one other thing I'll mention is you can look at which kind of thing it is, whether it's an academic journal, a magazine, a newspaper. Those are your three kinds that are perfectly fine. All three of these are acceptable, okay? So let's just take a look at one of these. So say I've got this one. I'm not going to read the whole thing up. So once again, this is where I would find my full text copy, okay? And all of your citation information is right here. One thing I will mention, you can click on the cite button over here. So if I click this, it's going to give me all the different kinds of citations. If we look at the MLA one, however, this is not accurate. This database and the library website has not upgraded from MLA 7th edition to MLA 8th edition. So do not use these citations. You will have them wrong and you will lose points for that. So you're going to have to make your citations yourself using the information presented to you right here. So it's not going to be in the same order, but this is where you're going to find it. Okay, so I'm going to click on PDF full text so that I can actually look at this source. Here's the thing about these articles. The internet is a great thing, and having access to websites that give you information quickly is great. Articles take longer to read, so you need to give yourself time to read them. I know you want to use websites because that's easier, but these are real scholarly work. This is how you do good research. Okay, so most of the time you're going to find your information on what the journal is up here somewhere. So this is from Supreme Court Debates, A Pro and Con Monthly, April 2016, Volume 19, Number 4. So this counts as an article. Even though you're finding it online, it's in a database. This is a PDF of the original. So you can read here, Stephanie Toti is the author. And then notice here, we've got actual pages. So this is how you know that what you have found is an article. Like I said, they're a little bit long. So it's going to be more reading to do than you might otherwise want to. And usually when you see something like this, that tells you that the article is at its end. So let's just take a look at one other one. So let's just look here. Abortion Northern Ireland interview with Bernadette Smythe. Who knows if it'd be valuable. So when you click on the title, by the way, like I just did, it's going to freeze for a moment. And then it will bring that up. So it'll bring you here. You can also just click on the full PDF button on the previous page and you'll get it right there. So let's take a quick look here. Now this is from the Human Life Review. So obviously there's a slight bias here. Okay, so this counts as a print source. So this is spring 2016 on page 63. So this is where you're usually going to find this kind of information. And then you'll be able to scroll all the way through and read, etc., etc., etc. Okay, and again, you see this page. This is how you know you're at the end. Now, one other thing I want to mention, I expect you to read the entirety of articles when it comes to searching for sources. Yes, they can be long, but this is what it means to be a good student, a good researcher, a good scholar, and academic is to read those articles. When you're looking for books, however, so let's go back to our books search. You know, if I'm looking at the street politics of abortion, speech, violence, and America's culture war, if I scroll down here, well, okay, it's not going to show up here. But when I go get this book out of the library, here we are, I'm going to find most of these books are split into chapters. You do not necessarily need to read the entirety of all three of your books. That's a lot of reading to do in a short period of time. I would suggest that as you move forward to working on your final draft, that you read as much of your sources as you can. But when it comes to the annotated bibliography, you are more than welcome to focus in on a particular chapter or two if you so desire. So look at the table of contents and see what kinds of things you find. Okay? But again, your sources should largely all come from searching our database. Now, if you find yourselves with questions, now that you've looked through here, please feel free to post them on the open discussion board, either the one that's for me or the one that's just for you students, and somebody should be able to answer your questions.